It's not a summer camp. It is a 4-week session of the Governor's School for the Arts. Something special. The teachers are not going to be living on the campus, but rather coming in for master classes, convocations where they will present lectures on bowings for the violin, or a lecture demonstration on the Brahms horn trio, or how theory can be functionally applied to music when the Beethoven symphony goes be-dee-dee. What does that mean? When it goes bum-bum-bum-bum, what's the chord?
100 music students chosen from all over the state of Tennessee to attend the Governor's School for the Arts in June, July of 1985 at Middle Tennessee State University in Murfreesboro. This is Lynn Folk for Tennessee Kaleidoscope with Patrick McGuffee, Executive Director of the Tuition-Free Project, where these young musicians will be not only increasing their musical expertise, but getting practical experience as well.
Our support staff is going to teach them how to not only be an orchestral player, but what goes on backstage. What happens if you need lights? Why do you set the cellos on the outside? Is it difficult to plan a program? Do you know you can get tennis elbow from a violin bow? So we have Tom Limbird from the Vanderbilt Hospital, an orthopedic surgeon, who will come and deliver a lecture in tandem with Peter Schaefer, our guest concertmaster, on postural playing to prevent maybe getting into some bad habits that would shorten a career down the road. The best of all that I have to give, I put into the curriculum and then said, well, what do you think? Is this a crazy idea to talk about tendonitis? And instead of saying, yeah, it's a little off the wall, people said, no, it's fascinating. Please keep going, don't stop.
Much was involved in the selection of these 100 young musicians, according to Patrick McGuffee, who is principal trumpeter with the Nashville Symphony and who was founder and director of the Washington, D.C. Chamber Players and a longtime musician and conductor.
As a 28-year veteran of symphonic music, as a guest soloist and guest conductor on 3 continents, I have never had the opportunity to participate in direct involvement with the curriculum development or the teaching of students to do what I have been doing all of my life until this program, which is entirely devoted to high school students. Originally, it was predicated on the thought that rising juniors and seniors in the arts would provide the best clientele, as it were, for consideration. So my first duty was to identify the objective. We want to find 100 gifted and talented students within the boundaries of the state of Tennessee, searching all public and private schools and looking for gifts and talents in music, specifically with a focus or an interest in orchestral studies. So then we published the material and sent it out through all of the guidance counselors in all of the public and private schools, and then I did a personal mailing list of over 800 band and orchestra directors throughout the state of Tennessee. Then the applications began to come in, and so I would go to the auditions and spend all day long, and I personally auditioned each of the students. 80% of their playing was considered as evidence of their ability, and 20% in interview.
Coming from various statewide geographical and musical backgrounds, there was great variety in the previous training demonstrated by these students. Some had years of lessons and musical experience.
Others would come in totally self-taught and have just a piece of band music. Well, that didn't matter. It wasn't important what they played, but did they exhibit some gifts and some talent, some enterprise, some quickness, some mental acuity, something that would really allow them to be the best that they could be on our final culminating concert in the Tennessee Performing Arts Center.
Although the concert, with a guest piano performance by Governor Lamar Alexander, marks the end of the 1985 Governor's School for the Arts, Executive Director Patrick McGuffee considers it to be the prelude to the future for these young musicians and for others to follow. This program, Tennessee Kaleidoscope, made possible by the National Endowment for the Arts, the Tennessee Arts Commission, and Johnson & Higgins of Tennessee, insurance brokers and employee benefit consultants. This is Lynn Folk.
An artist is motivated by things that come up from deep inside him. There are catalysts, events, things, happenings that occur that trigger these responses. But they come sort of automatically and very often come in a way that doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
Memphis artist Ted Faiers, who died in January 1985. This is Lynn Folk for Tennessee Kaleidoscope, remembering a conversation with him in his backyard in Memphis at the time he was preparing his three-dimensional panels for his mural of Tennessee history, now at First Tennessee Bank. We talked a lot about that and looked at his other works, too. And many of those pieces, 99 of them, are in the Ted Faiers retrospective show currently at the Tennessee State Museum in Nashville. Ted Faiers was born in England, moved to Canada at an early age, and he came south in 1952 to teach at the Memphis Academy of Arts. For 30 years he painted and reacted to events and conditions of the times, like the circumstances which produced two of his paintings, Exile and Rendezvous.
I've been motivated by all sorts of things almost instantaneously. For instance, there's a painting, it's called Rendezvous. It has to do with the death of Elvis Presley. I was stretching a canvas here when he died, and I was going to paint something else. I forget now what it was I had in mind, but I had some sketches. This was such a traumatic event, and the interest, of course, not only locally but worldwide, was so intense that one couldn't help but be sort of motivated to try to do something about it, to respond. I have a painting which is owned by a local company that was motivated by Solzhenitsyn's getting out of Russia years ago. I was very much taken up and interested in his predicament and everything that surrounded it. So a painting that I was just starting became immediately changed into a painting which dealt with him. The painting is not named after him. It's called The Exile, because he was being exiled. I like to just simply respond to the things that really drive me at the moment. I enjoy it more, and I hope and think that the results are better that way.
As we sat in Ted Faiers' yard, just outside his studio, he talked about artists responding to inner feelings, their own senses of right and wrong, about the irrationality of art, and how unpredictable it is.
Art is a very irrational thing. You don't question yourself about things. You just simply respond. If someone asks you why you did a certain thing, sometimes it's difficult to give a truthful answer. Very often, you would have to honestly say, I don't know. Why did you paint something a certain color? Or why did you make that big and that small? You know, you're responding to your feelings. There are two things that work strongly with an artist. One is intellect and the other is emotion. Sometimes perhaps one taking precedence over the other, not willfully, but the way circumstances are, it works that way. An artist shouldn't hold back on something that he feels might not have public approval, whether you're a painter or a writer or anything else. It's a matter of balancing all of these things. You paint what you are, where you are, in response to the things that happen. And who knows what that might be at any given time.
Memphis artist Ted Faiers, 1908 to 1985. His retrospective at the Tennessee State Museum continues through August 25, 1985, and will be at the Brooks Museum of Art in Memphis, November 85 to January 86. This program, Tennessee Kaleidoscope, made possible by the National Endowment for the Arts, the Tennessee Arts Commission, and the WPLN Educational Foundation. This is Lynn Folk. The sounds of Choctaw Indian dances at Archeofest 85, an annual festival of Indian cultures and archaeology at Pinson Mounds State Archaeological Area near Jackson, Tennessee. This is Lynn Folk for Tennessee Kaleidoscope, enjoying the museum, the crafts, the storytelling, and the Indian dances, where I talked with one of the principal dancers, Wood Bell, who was dressed in colorful apparel, bright red shirt, black pants, and hat, with only a few feathers on it, and he had his drum, which he made, with him.
I make the drum, and this drum was made out of skins. This part right here, hollow logs, and covered with the skins. And we use these drums for the dances, and also games, stickball game we played. Make music for those, and also for the dancers.
Tell me something about what you're wearing. Some people think that Indians are always going to be having a lot of feathers and headdresses and all, but that's not so, is it?
No, it's not so. Some of the Indian tribe, they always wear feathers, and when they're dancing, they put on some fancy feathers. But that's just Western Indians do this. In the Choctaw, Southeasterns, it's not, wearing all that feathers. You say just a few feathers, Even chief wear about, 3 feathers on the heads, And now in the Western Indian, they wear the big feather headdress,
Are you the leader of the performers here?
No, I'm not a real leader. I'm just a volunteer and sing for those boys and girls. The dances perform throughout Tennessee and part of Arkansas, Mississippi, and Illinois. There's some in North Carolina and also Oklahoma.
Oh, where do you live?
We are originally from Mississippi, Choctaw. We are Choctaw. We're from Choctaw Reservation close to Philadelphia, Mississippi. And we moved away from them back in the 50s. And now we live in West Tennessee, some throughout in Lauderdale County and also in Shelby County, which is where we're located now. And we do some Choctaw dancing. I've been dancing all my life, and these young people, I'm teaching them so they can carry on some of these days, So they do pretty good to learning now in the dances, and they can dance good, real good, but they cannot lead the song real good yet, but they will be pretty soon. They're doing pretty good leading the dances.
I have noticed that there are several younger children here dressed in costume, and are those the children you were referring to?
Yeah, well, these are children from all my relatives, and they're some of the children, little children, they're dancing with us so they can be dancing when they grow up, they'll be learning dancing.
You say you've been doing this dancing all your life?
My life, been doing it all my life.
Do you do other things too? Do you have a job? Or?
Yeah, I got a job. I work in Memphis, Tennessee, and I work in reconstructed museum in Chocolissa Indian Village, and I'm a guide. That's why I do through the daytime, and we go out to the dances for the public sometime to perform for the people. We like to do it, and they enjoyed it,
Later, on the grassy ceremonial grounds, surrounded by the Indian mounds dating back as far as 500 A.D., Woodbell and his family and friends performed Choctaw songs and dances, doing the green corn dance, the most important of all their tribal dances. Then there was the duck dance, the tick dance, and others. All of this at Archeofest at Pinson Mounds State Archaeological Area, Pinson, Tennessee. This program, Tennessee Kaleidoscope, made possible with the joint support of the National Endowment for the Arts, the Tennessee Arts Commission, and the Nashville chapter of the Tennessee Society of Certified Public Accountants. This is Lynn Folk.
Coming home, smiling back at neighbors. Coming home, smelling biscuits on the stove. Coming home is that simple country music that I love. Get ready, Tennessee, we're coming.
Sunbonnets and Tennessee agate. There'll be lots of these around for Homecoming '86, and lots of them now at clothesline art shows in the parks and at other arts and crafts shows and festivals. This is Lynn Folk for Tennessee Kaleidoscope with two friends who are often seen at these events, Bill Mangrum with his items from his rock and mineral collection, and Frances Mangrum with her sunbonnets.
It's a bonnet. I make these. I've been making them several years, and it just sits on your head, just real comfortable. I make the ones that tie under your chin too, but this is more comfortable.
You have them on display and for sale here at the Clothesline Art Show.
I have all different colors, have solid ones. Some of them I make that can be reversed on just the top. Have a printed on one side and solid on it, and the people really enjoy them.
Is this a leisure time activity with you or full time?
No, we just do it for hobby work, and we enjoy it. I enjoy sewing. It kind of relaxes me. And we enjoy our rocks too, and I try to make the jewelry after my husband does all the hard work. He's really the rockhound in the family, but I just tag along.
I'll talk with him now about the rocks. You're an old friend, Bill Mangrum. I see you have a choice spot right here because it's right next to the road and it's sort of at the crossroads, and as people come into the clothesline show they pass by your display. Is this a spot that you try to get every time you come here?
I try to make it here early enough to get it. I enjoy the shade here, and because of the shade my rocks don't get so hot they can't pick them up. I have pieces cut and polished for collectors. I have mineral deposits of quartz and calcite. And I just enjoy doing this, been going and looking for them and polishing them up. And I think the people that comes through gets a big kick out of seeing how many beautiful different colors of rocks we have in this earth crust. And I enjoy talking to them. This is my hobby.
Well, I don't think people realize really how artistic work with rock is and how beautiful the results are.
All the results is just fantastic. Me and my son was cutting yesterday afternoon, and the banded agate we cut with the different bands that we found was just fantastic. And yesterday afternoon I made one belt buckle up to bring out here, and I've had several comments on it.
And what are some of the other rocks and minerals you have here? Can you name just a few?
Well, I've got a few of the diamonds from Arkansas, the only diamond bed is in the United States that I know of. I have picture stones found out west. I have the quartz crystals from the crystal mine, Coleman No. 2 mine. I have the Tennessee agate, it's a state rock of Tennessee. I have potassium stones, the state rock of Michigan. I have the rose quartz is out of Oklahoma, the state rock of Oklahoma. And it's just so many that this is just a few to let you know that I have quite a few and enjoy my collection.
Well, here you do have the belt buckles and you have jewelry. Do people come to you to purchase materials to do artwork?
Sometimes they do. I have several that likes to come and collect it for their artwork because I can slice them down and then they can make the design that they choose to make. And most of the people or find a rock on their vacation, and they often wonder what's on the inside. And I've given out 3 cards today for people to come to my house for me to cut them because they didn't know where to go to get them cut. And so I look for people to come and visit me and see some of my collection, and I cut the rocks for them for a small price so that I can keep my saw blade going.
Bill Mangrum and his wife Frances, longtime members of the Rock and Mineral Club at Nashville's Cumberland Museum, who are seen often at Tennessee arts and crafts shows, Bill with his rock and mineral displays, Frances with the sunbonnets she makes. This program, Tennessee Kaleidoscope, made possible with the joint support of the National Endowment for the Arts, the Tennessee Arts Commission, and the WPLN Foundation. This is Lynn Folk.
A man just cannot have as pretty a voice as a woman. It just doesn't happen. I've heard some very engaging voices in men. But men in general do not like to be sat down at a table and told to read The Mockingbird by Sidney Lanier. They feel self-conscious. And women will do that, and it seems natural to them.
Dr. Jack Phelan of Maryville, Tennessee, talking about his collection of sounds and voices, women reading poetry, and some men making speeches. This is Lynn Folk for Tennessee Kaleidoscope with Dr. Phelan in his home in Maryville, where we listened to some of his recordings and talked about his interest in preserving these sounds and accents on tape.
It springs really from an emotional attachment to the sound of certain voices. For instance, the southern sound in general is the one I like because the others are harsher. And particularly with southern voices, the low country accent from coastal South Carolina, and also the softer southern voices from middle Tennessee. So it's primarily the southern accents that I like, and it always comes back to either the individual beautiful voice or the regional South Carolina accent. It really is a selfish thing. It's what I like, and what I like sets me off. I'm afraid, too, that the accents in the low country particularly are disappearing by ridicule and whatnot. The people are modifying their own accents. They're listening to TV and radio and all. So they lose that pristine quality of voice that is a local thing. And someday I feel they're going to be gone pretty much. And so I hope to preserve a little of it for myself at least on tape.
You hear a voice that you like or that appeals to you in one way or another. What's your next step for your collection?
It's mostly a question of lucky accident.
Are they all agreeable?
They're agreeable because they sense in me an appreciation of them, a real pleasure in hearing them talk. So they don't feel defensive. They don't feel in any way they're being made fun of or examples or anything like that.
Do you have them all do the same thing?
In general, I have standardized on the poetry of Sidney Lanier, this southern poet who is a minor poet and not even included in many of the modern anthologies. He lived in Maryville for a number of years. He also lived in Baltimore, where he played in the Baltimore Symphony. He played flute. But his poems are well crafted and romantic and have good imagery. The one I've used mostly is his poem, The Song of the Chattahoochee, which has a lot of vocal traps in it if you try to sight read it. And it's amazing how well people do who read it without having read it before and are not professional readers at all.
I am now going to read a poem. Out of the hills of Habersham, down the valleys of Hall, I hurry amain to reach the plain, run the rapid and leap the fall.
You record birds and other sounds in addition to human voices.
Around Maryville, if you turn on a recorder around 6 in the morning in the summer months, you just get a wall of sound of all sorts of birds. And I guess I do that really for the people who are knowledgeable, so somebody can listen to that tape sometime and say, oh, I heard a towhee in there or something like that.
I'm wondering if you've done any other work in the arts.
Photography. And there, I'm interested in faces.
Do faces ever match the voices that you hear?
No connection. A voice is a separate thing. Face is a separate thing.
Dr. Jack Phelan of Maryville, Tennessee, discussing his recorded collection of untrained, natural voices and interesting sounds. He's a member of a national organization, the Association for Recorded Sound Collections, Incorporated. This program, Tennessee Kaleidoscope, made possible by the National Endowment for the Arts, the Tennessee Arts Commission, and the WPLN Educational Foundation. This is Lynn Folk.
A few of us chased jobs to Detroit City. Some left home to live out teenage dreams. But even those who've looked the whole world over have seen just what the rest of us have seen.
A visit with friends and neighbors at the corner drugstore in Brownsville, Tennessee. This is Lynn Folk for Tennessee Kaleidoscope in Brownsville, one of the pilot communities for Homecoming 86.
Nothing's like the pride you feel on Main Street, from the courthouse steps down to the general store.
I went to the corner drugstore to talk with owner and druggist Leslie Warren about his avocation and interest in the art of making stained glass. And while I was there, I learned that many members of his family are also involved in the arts in various forms, as we were joined by his mother and sister. Here now, Leslie Warren, as we looked at pictures of his stained glass pieces.
Some have been purchased by different people in town, some I gave as gifts, and some were just very early tries at stained glass. This is in Lawyer Lyle Reed's house. He had 2 of these. They're 3 feet by 6 feet. My mother and I drew the pattern, and this was my second attempt at building something. 2 of these. And they put them in a cathedral ceiling with a skylight over each one. Really a beautiful sight in the daytime. And they've got lights for night up there. This is the latest one. We put that in the church here in Brownsville. In this picture, we're putting it up, and that fat boy in the picture is me. And there's my daddy asleep there over in the corner. See my brother up there, he's working.
It's quite a job just to install the stained glass, I know.
Oh, yeah. It so happened I trusted my brother to measure the opening. He measured 1 inch too narrow, and for that reason I made him put it in.
Did this stained glass art start out as a hobby with you, and then it's just a profession almost now? Oh, therapy.
Therapy, because I needed some relaxation, and it's very therapeutic that way. You can get off by yourself, and it takes quite a while, and the anticipation of finishing and see what it looks like is a whole lot of therapy in itself. It's such a thrill to pick it up and see that it all worked.
Do you do the designs for these?
That lady right there. My mother just walked in.
Leslie Warren's mother, Dorothy Jean, a painter.
We all enjoy working together in our projects, and it's lots of fun.
Leslie was telling me that you design a great many of the pieces for him.
He does a lot himself, but I like to get in on the act, too.
What kind of art is your specialty?
My specialty, I think, is painting children, doing portrait work of children. I have even painted people's horses. They call and say, "Could you paint my horse?" And one time a man said, "Could you paint my Appaloosa?" And I didn't know what an Appaloosa was, but I said yes. And so I did. I painted 3 Appaloosas. I will try anything, in oil, watercolor, acrylics, anything.
Voice teacher Sue Ellen Kelly, Warren's sister, and right there in the store, Sue Ellen Kelly sang for us as customers gathered round.
Summertime, I'll just do a little bit of that. Summertime and the living is easy. Fish are jumping and the cotton is high. Your daddy's rich and your ma is good looking. So hush, little baby, don't you cry.
Sue Ellen Kelly, Dorothy Jean Warren, and Leslie Warren at the corner drugstore on the edge of the square in Brownsville, Tennessee. This program, Tennessee Kaleidoscope, made possible with the joint support of the National Endowment for the Arts, the Tennessee Arts Commission, and Johnson & Higgins, insurance brokers and employee benefit consultants. This is Lynn Folk.
We have a number of tourists visit here. I think because our location is close to the Museum of Science and Energy, formerly the Atomic Energy Museum. The Visitors Bureau is also close by, and I think an awful lot of tourists when they come to this area, they are interested in the museums and interested in art, so this is a good stop for them. We're real proud of our facility here, and anyone that is in the Oak Ridge area would like them to come by and see what we have up.
Oak Ridge, Tennessee is world famous as the energy capital, but there's much going on in the arts there also. There's an active arts council, a lot of involvement in dance, music, and theater, and there's the Oak Ridge Community Arts Center and Museum of Fine Art. This is Lynn Folk for Tennessee Kaleidoscope when I talked with James Hodge, director of the Art Museum, which features permanent and changing exhibits by regional artists and those of international fame. And there's much emphasis on art education programs.
Oak Ridge was selected as a target city by the Smithsonian Institution to conduct a workshop series in education. It's called the School Museum Partnership, a bringing together of museums and educational organizations in East Tennessee and making their presence known to all the schools.
Now, is this the only museum in Oak Ridge? I know the Atomic Museum is here, but the only art museum?
Yes, it is. Oak Ridge has a number of fine museums. They also have the Children's Museum. They cater to a little more educational and history-oriented exhibits and classes where we try to show fine art and craft exhibits and classes.
I would assume that a great many people in the community are interested in art.
I'm sort of a newcomer to Oak Ridge. I've lived in Knoxville for over 10 years, but my interpretation and my reaction from the people in Oak Ridge that they're a very sophisticated audience. They have tended to live in several different locations. A lot of them come from scientific backgrounds, and so therefore they expect a little more out of their art center. And so we try and offer real top quality exhibits and top quality classes. We have a rental program. I believe it's over 600 paintings and photographs and drawings that are all framed and are available. And we found that to be a real popular feature. Individuals can rent the works for a month period and then exchange it for, say, another work. Or if they choose to, they can go ahead and purchase the work.
Where did you get the pieces in the first place so that they can be purchased?
This rental collection are pieces that have been donated by mostly local artists with the express purpose as going into our rental program. And they understand that it's possible that their work will be purchased. Our permanent collection, which is a museum collection itself, is not for sale and not for rent.
And where did those pieces come from?
The bulk of the collection was donated by the Alden and Mary Gomez family here in Oak Ridge, longtime residents and very avid collectors. Most of that work is 20th century expressionist type work, sort of modern.
I imagine that the people in Oak Ridge are interested in classical music too, and I understand that you have a record collection here.
Right. It's a very extensive collection. Mostly, again, classical music. We have had in the past brown bag lunch listening sessions where we will offer several different selections played during the noontime hour where people can come in and enjoy their lunch to some nice music. And we don't actually rent that collection out, but we're trying to make it more available to the public in the future.
James Hodge, director of the Oak Ridge Community Arts Center and Museum of Fine Arts. This program made possible with the joint support of the National Endowment for the Arts, the Tennessee Arts Commission, and the WPLN Educational Foundation. This is Lynn Folk.